You look in the mirror and smile. You see your mother's eyes or your father's nose. That is basic, beautiful genetics at work. But for the most powerful king of the 17th century, the mirror reflected a biological death sentence, hiding a terrifying genetic truth. For 99% of human history, evolutionary instinct drove your ancestors to mix their genes, keeping tribes healthy. Yet the Spanish Habsburgs ignored this powerful survival instinct for over 200 years, marrying only within their own elite closed circle. This resulted in a king with an inbreeding coefficient of 0.2554, a tangled genetic web more severe than siblings. How does a family obsessed with purity accidentally engineer their own destruction? Today, we are opening the medical files of the ultimate dynasty. To understand this collapse, your brain needs to see how traits are passed down. Imagine every trait you have comes in pairs. You get one half from your father and one half from your mother. This natural shuffling is evolution's way of protecting you. The healthy piece usually masks a harmful mutation. This is why your prehistoric ancestors naturally sought out mates from different tribes. Diversity was their invisible shield against. But what happens when both parents share the exact same broken genetic puzzle pieces? There is no healthy piece left to compensate. That brings us back to the grand, shadowy halls of the Spanish Empire. The Habsburgs ruled half the known world with absolute power. They believed their royal blood was literally a gift from God. To mix it with commoners or lesser nobles was considered unthinkable. So, uncles married nieces. First cousins married first cousins, generation after generation. And at the very bottom of this complex family tree stood the final king. His entire life was shaped by this closed circle. To truly understand how a human body becomes a museum of errors, you need to step back in time exactly 200 years.
Fascinating.
Meet the Habsburgs. They were not just a royal family, they were a global superpower controlling Spain, Austria, and parts of the Americas. Your brain is wired to seek out new alliances. Ancient tribes survived by making friends with strangers and sharing resources, but the Habsburgs had a different strategy. They believed their power was so absolute that no outsider was worthy of joining their bloodline. So they married each other. Uncle married niece. First cousin married first cousin. It was a political strategy that worked brilliantly on paper. You and the archaeologist look at the royal records. For generations, they successfully kept their massive wealth and territories completely locked within the family. However, biology does not care about your political strategy or your gold. Biology only cares about genetic diversity, which they were actively destroying. Normally, you have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, and 8 great-grandparents. This beautiful outward branching protects your genetic. But look at Charles II. Instead of having 8 great-grandparents, his twisted family tree folded back on itself so many times. Because of all this inbreeding, he only had 4 great-grandparents. His parents were uncle and niece, but they were also cousins multiple times over. It gets worse. The archaeologist points out a terrifying fact. His ancestry was so tangled that his genetic. When you inherit identical broken genes from both sides, terrible things happen. Your body loses the blueprint it needs to build healthy organs. Over 2 centuries, 9 out of 11 royal marriages in this Spanish dynasty were consanguineous, meaning they were between This invisible genetic poison accumulated silently generation after generation. It was a ticking biological time, and that bomb finally detonated in 661, with the birth of a fragile, sickly baby boy who would inherit the entire empire. To measure exactly how dangerous this was, scientists published a massive study.
Wow. How did they find out?
Alvarez and his team traced 3,000 individuals across 16 generations of the Habsburg family. The numbers they found, they calculated something called the inbreeding coefficient. This number measures the probability that you will inherit 2 identical genes from the. Normally, if 2 unrelated people have a child, that number is virtually 0. Your body is protected by a wide, diverse genetic shield. If a brother and sister were to have a child, which is universally taboo, their baby would have a coefficient of 0.25. King Charles II had a coefficient of 0.254. His genetic risk was actually higher than an incestuous brother-sister pairing. But why exactly is this high number a biological death sentence? Your brain needs to understand the concept of recessive genetic mutations. Every human carries a few dangerous broken genes, but they are usually recessive. They sleep silently in your DNA. They stay asleep because you have a healthy matching gene from your other parent that takes control, keeping your organs functioning perfectly well. However, when your parents are closely related, they often carry the exact same sleeping mutation, passed down from the exact same grandparent. When you inherit 2 copies of the same broken gene, there is no healthy backup left. The sleeping mutation wakes up and destroys the blueprint. For Charles, this didn't just happen with one gene. It happened across his entire genetic code. His body simply forgot how to build itself. The Alvarez study concluded that two rare genetic disorders simultaneously attacked the young king, causing his muscles to fail. As he grew up in the grand, wealthy Spanish court, the biological damage became impossible to hide. The royal family's signature look, meant to project ultimate power, had deformed into something so extreme that the young king could barely eat. You might recognize this specific jawline from old museum paintings. It was called the Habsburg Jaw, a symbol of supreme royal authority. But what court painters drew as a strong, noble feature was actually a severe genetic deformity known as mandibular prognathism. Imagine your lower jaw growing so far forward that your top and bottom teeth can never actually touch each other. For your ancient hunter-gatherer ancestors, teeth were their most vital survival tools. Without them, you simply could not process food. Your evolutionary biology designed a perfect, interlocking bite mechanism to help you chew tough roots and raw meat easily. But King Charles II could not chew at all. His jaw structure made eating solid food completely impossible for him. He had to swallow all of his food completely whole, leading to terrible stomach pains and chronic digestive illnesses every single day. And the genetic damage did not stop at his jawline. His tongue was also abnormally large for his mouth cavity. Try speaking with a heavy weight resting on your tongue. For Charles, communicating with his own court was a massive struggle. Mr. Ethel Blub.
What is he saying?
I don't understand him at all. You often dream of having unlimited wealth and power. But imagine being trapped inside a body that makes eating a nightmare. The same family that commanded vast oceans and continents could not even guarantee their own king the ability to speak clearly. The archaeologist shows you how this specific jawline was tracked by modern geneticists across generations of the Habsburg portraits. It proved a direct, undeniable link. The more inbred a Habsburg king was, the more pronounced and severe the deformity became. Nature was sending a brutal, undeniable warning. But the royal family, blinded by their absolute power, simply refused to listen. In a normal evolutionary timeline, your brain is wired to rapidly learn survival skills. A healthy toddler walks by age 1, but the royal records show a grim reality. Charles did not learn to speak until he was 4 years old, and could not walk until he was 8. Imagine the frustration of a young mind, trapped inside a royal body that simply refused to develop according to basic human biology, and as he grew into adulthood, the genetic tax only increased. He suffered from severe seizures, chronic bone pain. Your brain is designed to heal internal problems, but when your entire genetic blueprint is written with errors, the brain has no healthy instructions to read. He was given the nickname the Bewitched, because 17th century doctors could not understand how one person could physically. The ultimate goal of this intense royal inbreeding was to produce a strong, pure-blooded heir to safely inherit the. However, the very strategy they used to protect their bloodline made Charles completely sterile. By the time he reached his late 30s, the king looked like a frail, elderly man. His organs were simultaneously shutting down, one by one. On November 1st, 1700, King Charles II died at just 38 years old, but the most shocking revelation came after his death. The royal physician performed an autopsy. The doctor recorded that his corpse contained almost no blood. His heart was famously described as being the size of a single black peppercorn. His lungs were heavily corroded, his intestines were failing, and his reproductive organs were completely withered. Most terrifying of all, the physician noted that the king's head was entirely full of water. It was a complete systemic bias. You are looking at the final, undeniable proof. When human arrogance tries to cheat the ancient laws of evolution, you might wonder why regular people do not make this same catastrophic mistake. How did your ancestors know to avoid inbreeding without modern science? Long before DNA testing existed, your prehistoric ancestors survived by relying on a powerful, invisible instinct. In 891, anthropologist Edvard Westermark discovered this brilliant survival mechanism. The rule is simple. If you are raised closely alongside someone during your first few years of life, your brain categorizes them as family. Look what I found.
Wow. Can I have some?
Here, your brain observes this constant childhood closeness and permanently flags those individuals. It creates a deep, natural psychological. This disgust is not a cultural rule you have to learn. It is a hardwired evolutionary alarm system designed to protect your genetic code. Because of this instinct, young adults in ancient tribes felt a natural urge to seek out partners from completely different, unrelated groups. Anthropologists observing modern hunter-gatherers found that individuals often travel vast distances, crossing harsh landscapes. This subconscious drive created massive, overlapping social networks. But the Spanish Habsburgs firmly believed their royal blood made them immune to the laws of nature. They locked themselves away in stone castles. They intentionally overrode their biological alarm systems. They used political power and special papal dispensations. This is a classic evolutionary mismatch. A modern social structure, like absolute monarchy, completely broke a survival instinct. When your brain's natural defenses are bypassed by extreme wealth and power, the body pays a terrible price. The invisible shield is shattered. The royal family traded their evolutionary health for political dominance. And in the end, that arrogance erased their entire bloodline from the earth. When King Charles took his final breath in 1700, he left behind no children and no clear heir to the Spanish throne. Suddenly, the most powerful global empire on earth, controlling vast territories across Europe and the Americas, was completely up for grabs. The archaeologist explains that this biological dead end instantly transformed into one of the most terrifying geopolitical time bombs in Europe. The throne is mine.
We'll see about that.
Vulture's Circle. This sparked the War of the Spanish Succession, a brutal and devastating conflict that set the entire European continent absolutely on fire. For the next 13 years, massive armies clashed across the globe. The obsession with keeping royal blood pure had directly triggered a world war. You watch the historical records in horror. The catastrophic biological price of this elite inbreeding was not just paid by... Historians estimate that nearly 400,000 soldiers and civilians died in the ensuing chaos, all because of a single collapsed family tree. Your brain understands a grim reality. When rulers defined natural evolutionary laws, eventually a peace treaty was signed, but the Spanish Empire was violently ripped apart, its massive global territories carved up among the victors. The mighty Spanish Habsburg dynasty, which had ruthlessly dominated the world for 2 centuries, was permanently erased from the throne of Spain. A new dynasty, the French Bourbons, took over the crown. They brought a completely new, healthy set of genetic puzzle pieces to the kingdom. The archaeologist carefully closes the thick medical file. The story of King Charles II stands as a brutal, unforgettable lesson from nature. It proves that human biology is not a suggestion. It is an absolute law, written into your DNA over millions of years of evolution. But this ancient instinct to diversify your genes still silently controls your modern life today, in ways you might not even realize. Even in the modern world, the ancient Westermark effect still silently guides your daily behavior without you ever consciously noticing it. Your brain automatically categorizes them as biologically off-limits. Your brain forcefully puts up that invisible psychological barrier. This is your prehistoric genetic shield working. Today, humans easily travel across vast oceans and continents, mixing genetic puzzle pieces in incredibly diverse ways. This massive global diversity is exactly what human biology demands to perfectly build a healthy, resilient body. The archaeologist carefully locks away the Habsburg medical file. Their terrifying biological collapse remains a grand dynasty ultimately destroyed by their stubborn refusal to act naturally human. For 99% of human history, your prehistoric ancestors intuitively understood that reaching out, sharing, every single time completely different genetic backgrounds finally meet, their puzzle pieces flawlessly interlock. Your own living, breathing body right now is the incredibly successful result of thousands of beautifully diverse conditions. Your brain and your DNA are not royal, but they are absolute masterpieces of evolutionary engineering. So, the next time you wake up, get out of bed, and walk up to the glass reflection in your modern bathroom, you look in the mirror and smile. You see your mother's eyes or your father's nose staring completely healthy right back at you. You now deeply understand that this is not just basic, beautiful genetics. It is an ancient, hard-won survival victory. It is the ultimate proof that you are the triumphant result of a diverse, interconnected human family that beautifully refused to stand alone.